My name is Larry Ridge, and I carve carousel animals out of wood. The term carousel actually comes from Italy. It literally means little war. And the nobility of the time would use that as a device for their knights to practice on. And they had a little wooden contraption that they would ride and swing around and then use their lances to try to catch a brass ring. And that's where the term catching the brass ring comes from. This went on for years and years, and then even the common people decided that they wanted to do it, and they started building their own carousels for entertainment. And from that point, it just started spreading all across through Europe into England, and even later on came the United States. There was a lot of, after the Civil War, a lot of expansion and growth in America. And so all of these guys that were in Europe that were carvers and things of that nature, they would immigrate to America. And when they got here, they started building their own carousels here. This is one of the horses that has recently been restored here. It's from the 1910, 1911 time period. It's carved originally by Daniel Mueller. It's a beautiful horse, but if you'll notice, right here you see where all the muscles and the shadows are and everything. We try to emulate what the horse really has got, but sometimes it has to be a little bit stylized. It can't be just anatomically correct, but we have to imply that it's there. So what you've got here is a big muscle mass that's here. There's one that goes on the bottom side here on the top, and then it goes, this tendon right here goes up through here to the joint. This is the knuckle joint of the knee, and obviously that's one of the more complicated pieces you've got to carve. But then you run down, and here's the tendon that goes down the back of the leg, and then there's the knee, the ankle joint right there, and then the lower part of the leg. But you got to remember there's probably, well, there's one piece of wood that goes this way, there's another piece of wood that goes this way, and then maybe another one that comes out that way. Because again, we're trying to maximize strength in all directions. So that's the way they would have made them to start with. But we had to strip this one down and go ahead and paint it and everything, and put all new paint on it, get it cleaned up and stuff. But it's turned out to be quite the beauty. They put the little angel faces on the side of it with all the trappings and everything. Makes it look really, really nice. It's got a real tail on the back end that we got a new one and put on there, since the other one, it kind of faded away and wasn't looking too good. But you can see how much work and effort was put into this one, but it is definitely a beautiful, beautiful horse. I personally like to carve carousel horses and love to do it on a day-to-day basis because there is so much rich history there. You can look at the history that comes in from just the techniques they use, the tools that you use. They've been around for hundreds of years. And then all of a sudden, the parts about the carousel, the history of the carousel in America. There's so much that can be said about that alone. Sometime when I'm in here by myself working on these animals, they're watching me too. They all have glass eyes, and they'll sit here and watch what you're doing to make sure that you do it right, and keep the history alive and keep the tradition alive. Because again, it's gone forward for hundreds of years already. I think it's my job to keep it going forward 100 years or more, just to make sure that we still have that joy of carousels years from now. Now these horse heads are interesting in the context that they show different positions for the horse head. And when you're trying to show the different personalities or the different effects that's going on, you put the head in all kinds of different positions. And if you look at these two at the last, this one's looking up toward the sky, and they actually call that a stargazer. And this one's kind of mean looking, and he's got his chin tucked down. That's a tuck position. So that's trying to generate some horse that's got a little hostility, if you will. And this one's kind of stylized and looking up at the ceiling, but there's all different styles and types. So that's where you get their personality, by the position of the head and how you go ahead and put the eyes in there. We haven't put the glass eyes in this one yet, but you notice all these others do, and see how wide-eyed this horse is, because he's a startled horse. And he's looking like he's seeing something up there that's either scaring him or he's trying to go after it. I love to carve carousel animals because every day it's something new. And when you have the opportunity to come in and start with something as simple as just a board and build it and put it together and create it and then start carving on it, it is an amazing process, because you can look at a pile of lumber and technically that is a horse. It just has to be processed, as they say. But to be able to start with just a flat board and to put it into a body to design the horse that you want to do, to put all the nuances that you want to do to personalize it so that it's your horse. I like to put names on them, put different pictures of the kids and stuff like that on them. It's just something that's totally unique because every animal that goes out of here is totally different. There's no such thing as repetition. You could do the same pattern 5 times and it would go out of here as a different animal every time. This is a new horse that we have going now from a lady that just started carving. This is her first attempt, and it's really turning out good. She's really taking a challenge on with this wild mane like she's doing, and now we're just blocking in the neck and the shape of it and everything, and we've got the head tilted where it tilts to the side. I still got to add another piece of wood up here for the throat latch on the front side of the horse, but she's working now just to get the shapes of the necks and the muscles in here as they blend, as they go across through there. And then she's going to finish the mane down through here, and it's going to have the mane coming around the bottom side down here where you can see it flow in this direction. And then these back here are going to wrap and go back this way over there. We've already got the eyes in this one, so we still got to put a little putty in there to put the eyes in, or finish putting the eyes in. But she's pretty well along for someone who's just started. It's amazing how quick she's caught on and she's getting after this thing. So. But it's going to be a beautiful one when she gets through. People think they're solid, but there's no way they're solid. They're made out of anywhere from 50 to 120 pieces of wood. They're laminated together in the legs, the body, the necks, the heads, the tails. All the pieces are made out of multiple pieces of wood. Because what we strive to do is to make a horse that is as light as possible, but it also has to be as strong as possible. So you want to maximize the direction of the grain in all the joints and all the different positions on there. So it requires some pretty good design work when you finally start with the picture that the people want you to use. You have to start figuring out how to put them all together. So that's the part that's really interesting to me, the mechanical part of it. But you have to glue them together using a proper glue. You have to make the joints correct so that they'll fit together seamlessly without any problems in them. Then you have to put all that together and make sure you put it together in a way that it won't split or crack on you or even warp sometimes if there's too much moisture in the air. It's a lot of process just to get the bodies together before you ever start doing any carving on it. This is one of the horses that our students are working on now, and you can see how we're putting it together. He's worked on the body and has done the relief on the side panels and everything to get some of this going here. We still have more carving to do up here. This is actually a knot that goes with all this drapery down through here. But he's done a good job on the saddle so far. We got to do some more work on it, but it's got a canteen and a bedroll. You can see all the different hardware here for all the different harness and stuff that goes on it. This is a blanket and stuff. But the cool thing is you can still see that the head up here is just flat as it can be. We also have another piece that will go on the top where his top knot comes up and does kind of a fleur around this way. Gets a little wild and crazy, but you know, again, as we talked about it being in pieces, I can take the head off and all it is a block of wood. You see, just a couple of pieces stuck together. Same thing with the neck, it's just pieces that are glued together. Matter of fact, if you can look right here, you can see how many pieces of wood we put here. There's one piece right there, another one right there, another one right there, and another one there. So there's 4 complete pieces of wood glued together to make that neck up like that without, you know, being flat and everything. And he's trying to carve it around now and get it where it's looking good. But, you know, again, glue joints, dowel joints, and we just set it back on there and it will stay put. If I can find the hole, there we go. Sometimes I can spend 2 days or more just doing nothing more than doing a pattern and a print that shows me where all the pieces go, how long they have to be, how wide they have to be, and how many of them I need. And that can take up a week or more of just cutting all of those pieces. This is one of the most important parts of what we do here. This is actually a full-size pattern that we do of the animal that we're going to carve. And you can see that we've got it up here with all these different sections laid out. And that tells me how to put this thing together. We have all the different body parts that go here, the panels that go on the side, the same thing for the neck and the head. You can also see where we're starting to transfer the pattern over to transfer paper. And that way we can take it to the block of wood that we're going to use and make a pattern. The legs are made separate from the rest of the body, but we also have them laid out where we can do that sort of thing too. So what we've done here is maximize the strength of the wood and minimize the weight by using the right direction of grain for everything. So we have grain direction going up the neck and then down the head and then going through the body. Same thing in the legs. You'll get the grain going in the strongest direction needed from front to back, and the same in the front leg with a joint right here as one of the things that we do to make sure it's as strong as possible and as light as possible. But we have to do that before we even start milling the lumber and figuring out how many pieces we're going to use, because each one of these, like the neck has about 5 pieces of wood in it, the head will have at least 3. You'll have the same thing in each of the legs. They'll probably have 4 to 6 different pieces of wood glued together to make the different legs. And then the body part's the same thing. We have the filler blocks, and then we have the main blocks on the top and the bottom for strength, as well as the side panels where we carve on all the decorations and everything. We literally start from boards that were shipped down here from places like Pennsylvania, Minnesota, Canada, Upper New York State to get the best quality wood that we can find. And we get some wood in here sometimes. It's just amazing because it literally can be 2 inches thick, 14 inches wide, and 14 feet long without having a blemish in it. It's amazing some of the stuff that we can get. And we use the linden tree. It's called northern linden actually, but the nickname for it is basswood, and that's what we call it around here, is just basswood. It's a white, creamy, middle density wood. It's a hardwood. But it's amazing how much texture that the linden wood can take and still be soft enough and light enough that you can pick it up and carry a carousel horse around with you. But we have to go through a milling process and a kill-driven process to get the wood stable, and we cut it down to a section and a size that we can use in the carousel horse, because when we start putting these patterns together, we literally make them life size, and we look at the context of how many pieces of wood's going to be required to put the bodies together. We have to put the filler blocks in there, we have to put the side panels on, we have to put the neck pieces all together, and it's amazing how you have to use different types of wood, different widths of wood, even different thicknesses of wood, and put them together so that when you laminate it out and finally get all those pieces put together, that you've got enough that's going to be there for when you do all your carving, that you can get all the pieces in there and still be strong. A lot of people don't realize when they see a carousel horse that it's actually a hollow animal. We put them together with maybe up to 100 pieces of wood just to laminate them all together, but the inside is always hollow. That's to save weight and also to make the animal more flexible so that it won't split. But we always end up putting things in there, and I couldn't tell you the number of times that people have had even keepsakes from their family to stick on the inside before we seal them up. They'll put things in there and put their names in there, even put photos in there, pictures of when they were here carving and everything. And it's just a little time capsule that they can send forward into the future, that someone will be able to share this process that we had here. Just wanted to show you a little bit about how this thing goes together, because what we have here on the back end of the horse, obviously the horse's rear, but you'll see all the different pieces of wood that we stacked in here, and these are all glued from the top to bottom, and that's called filler blocks, and that's what holds the whole horse together. Everything comes off of these filler blocks, and then there's pieces that are glued on the side. You'll see this seam line right here. That's where the side panels come on each side. And then we've got the ones on the bottom and the top that go all the way through to make the saddles and everything else on them. But you can see a little bit about what the difference of the woods that we have here, because certainly this particular one has 8 pieces of wood. That's number 7 right there, so that's number 8. So there's 8 pieces of wood going up and down, and they go about 6 to 8 inches inside the horse here, and that supports the legs, which are one of the strength areas required, because you put all the weight on it there. So you put this solid here so you can run the dowels and put the legs on it and you can support weight. But in the center, you don't have as much need for that, so that's where you make it hollow there. So let's go around to the other side. You can see the side panels that we've done here. Obviously, that's where the hollow part's right in here. But again, as you come up to here, right in this general area where the legs are going to go in and the neck is going to the top, from here all the way to the top, it's a solid piece of wood. Again, put 7 or 8 different pieces of wood in there, laminated together. They're just laid on top of each other. They fill up the void in the center and then give integrity and strength to everything that goes there. If you'll come on around, you can see a little bit of the same thing in the front. Again, we're starting with the one here and then 2, 3, all the way down through there. And we'll carve all of this away, and this will be the front part of the horse with the banners that go around here and the legs and everything go in there. But that's where all the strength has to be, because that's where all the load is going to be. So we'll keep it nice and tight here, but same thing here. 7 down, go in about 6 to 8 inches, and then the side panels go on the side and get glued in there together. So it gives you a nice structure and strength to the horse, as well as it gives you something that you can do a lot of carving with and make a really beautiful horse, as well as one that'll last a long time. I started carving when I was 14 because my Sunday school teacher gave me an X-Acto carving set for Christmas. It was a part of the first gifts that I ever got. It was a carving tool. And from there, I started carving pretty much everything that I could get my hands on. Carved different things with birds and things of that nature, and got pretty good at it. And actually, there was a Kings Ridge gallery. It was in Chattanooga with James and Ann King that bought my first piece of carving and sold it. I guess that made me a professional at that time, but not a very good one. But at any rate, I kept carving and everything. And then I finally met Bud Ellis, and he was the one that got me started on carousel horses. I met him at a wood carving club meeting. And Bud had a vision, and he was trying to build a carousel here in Chattanooga that using the old traditional methods of hand carving and everything. And he knew that I was a carver, and he decided to talk to me about joining him in this quest that he had trying to build a carousel. And one thing Bud could do, as well as paint and carve, was he was quite the salesman, and he would convince people to do things that they did not think they could do. He would convince them to commit to things that were nearly impossible by most people's standards. But he started the horsing around carousel carving school with his wife, Johnny, and spent years putting this thing together until they finally started building a carousel in Chattanooga that's still there today, and had a lot of people, myself included, a lot of volunteers, over 100 of them or more, that literally dedicated their time and their energies and their talents just to make that horse the right way, the way it used to be made, with chisels and gouges and mallets and things of that nature, that could go on this carousel and ride children around for the next 100 years or more. Yeah, we do a lot more than horses around here. This is a dog that first-time carver is working on right now. It's going to be a beagle, obviously. So you can see how they've gotten the head shape already in place and getting it started and everything. And we're trying to give it a look so that it's got its head turned and looking up toward its master. And then we're going to put the legs and everything on it and finish up on it. But this is her first carving. And so seeing something come along this quickly for somebody that's just a first timer is a nice thing, because she's got plenty of work she's still got left to do, but she's catching on really quick. And she comes in once or twice a week and works on it. But you know, he's got his head turned. We've got the muzzle shaped out up here. We're going to put the nose in, going to put the mouth under here with the lip and the jowls hanging down. And then we're going to put specific eyes in here that are the size of what a beagle would be, which are a lot smaller, but they'll go right about there. And that'll make him look like he's looking up at you. So it's going to be kind of cool. Painting it's going to be fun too, because obviously you got the blacks and the browns and the whites of a beagle that you got to work with. So that's going to be kind of neat. But she's doing a good job on it. When somebody is starting to carve, one of the hard parts for them to understand is that we actually start with a negative process. In a lot of art, you're adding things to it. It's a positive process where you're painting on something or you're using clay or whatever. But when you're carving, the first thing you have to do is reduce the amount of wood that you're working with. So we start with a big block of wood. The first thing you have to do is to start removing all the wood off that horse that you don't need or won't use later on for something on as far as the decorations go. And that's a hard thing for most people to transition to, because they think in a positive fashion. That's our normal way of doing things, but you have to think negative first and then go to positive when you do carving. That's one of the learning processes that we go through here at the school and everything. And when a person first starts to carve, it's kind of amazing to watch the transition, because what happens is the first couple of days they're trying to carve, it's clumsy. And it's awkward to them and frustrating because they're trying to learn a process and apply it to a project. To me, it's kind of like trying to learn to ride a bicycle and do the Tour de France at the same time, because you're trying to build something with a technique that you haven't mastered yet. And so what happens usually is about the fourth or fifth day, you start seeing the improvements where people finally get what you've been telling them and they start catching on. So sometimes you can figure anywhere from 200 to 400 hours of carving and painting before you get your animal finished. A lot of that depends on how hard you want to work or how fast you want to, but that's where all the magic starts, because literally to know that you've got to take off this piece of wood before you can carve, say, a rosette or something on the side of the trappings of the animal is the hard part to think of, because they think of the positive first, not the negative. It's a transition that you have to learn, but it's not that difficult once you learn it. But to me, it's amazing because we'll take out some of the bigger gouges. Number 11 is one of my favorite. Number 11 is basically a U-shaped tool it's kind of like a parabolic curve. But when you're trying to take off a lot of wood in a short amount of time, it's the go-to tool, because it will literally take wood off by the handfuls with a mallet, and you can really get down to where you want to go. Because the old saying with the wood carvers was that they don't pay you except for that last eighth of an inch of carving, because everything before that is just work. And so what you have to do is get all that wood out of your way so you can do that. But once the people learn how to carve, learn how to master the tool to make it do its job, a carving tool is one of the simplest things in the world. It's got a shape, it's got a bevel, it's got a handle. And all you have to do is make it do what you want it to do with using the handle on it, and it's amazing what you can accomplish. The chisel system that we have is called the Sheffield system, and it's a numbered system, and it goes from 1 up to 9 or 10 in most cases, and for the roundness of them. And what that is, it gives you a tool that has a specific arc to it. They call it a sweep or a profile, and it's got a specific shape to it. So if I say a number 5 and a guy's been carving for a while, he knows exactly what a number 5 looks like. But we can use the different types of tools that we have here, create any kind of shape that is known to man, I guess, with all the different options we have. And you can create beautiful, beautiful trappings on the side of horses, and all the different nuances of the animal itself, how the muzzles are shaped, how the mouth is shaped, how the manes are shaped. It's all done with the proper tool. One of the most important things you're going to find as you carve is all the different tools that you have available to you. And one of the things I tell my students is that no matter what problem you face, somebody's already figured out the answer to make that work for you. And so some of that is really just trying to figure out what somebody else has done to do it. But this one right here is my favorite. That's the number 11 I talked about. And this is a number 11 30 millimeter. And what that means is that's a number 11 profile, 30 millimeter wide. And you measure the width of it from point to point on the front end of it. So as I turn this around, you're going to see the end is a kind of a parabolic curve. And what you'll see, the bottom portion down here is rounded and shaped kind of like a number 9. It's almost like a half circle. But then if you look at the sections that are on the side right here, they're more like a number 3, so they have a different shape to them. You see how flat this section is right here versus the center line there? And then one of the reasons I like this tool so much is I get to use it 2 different ways. Because if I want to cut something fast and cut a groove in something, I can turn it like this and present it to the wood with this as the bottom. And then when I want to smooth it off, all I have to do is rotate it to the side and use this section right here to smooth all that section out. So it gives me 2 chisels in one, and it's very effective and very quick. Like if you're doing roughing out and trying to do some design work, you can literally remove all the waste wood with this side and then smooth it all out with that side without ever having to change gouges, and do it in one motion. Now these tools that I have laid out right here are specialty tools that you can use on carving. And the main thing that you got to remember with carving tools is that they have a special reason for everything. These are some of my favorites, and if you'll look at the difference of these, they're upside down. And they literally call these a bent back tool. And so if you look at these, you'll notice that the bevel is on this side, away from, like if you have a tool like that, it's that upside down. And what that allows you to do is to carve underneath things and or carve things like rope or something like an ivy, a grapevine or something like that you're looking for. It gives you the ability to round something over and make a curve out of it from this side. These other tools are spoon gouges, and they call them spoons because they look like spoons if you look how the profile is and everything. And what those are for is to allow you to dip down into an area and scoop out a piece of wood and bring it back up very quickly and carve it nice and clean without any problem. And this last batch that I've got over here is the V tools, and you'll notice how they're all shaped as a V. They come in different shapes and sizes, but then you'll also notice we have the different curves in them like we have here. That gives you all three different profiles, and that also allows you to go down into a valley and cut in under some things and then bring it back up without having to worry about the other wood getting in your way. They're very handy and very useful to outline and do all kinds of specialty things, but the effect of having the curve allows you to do a lot more creative things with them. At the Horsing Around Carousel Carving School, we teach people how to carve these animals, and we also do a lot of restoration work. It's amazing to me how many carousel horses are out there that have been in somebody's barn or other places that haven't been on the carousel for years and years and years. And sometimes there's damage to them, and people will find us and call us, and they'll want us to repair them and put them back in like new shape. You can't do that with machinery. And so what we have to do here is to use the same tools and techniques that they did back 100 years ago to repair them. We try to keep as much of the original horse or animal that we can, but we have to put new legs on them sometimes, or new tails, or even sometimes a new eye or head. But it maintains the original design of the animal, the original techniques of the animal, and we try to send it out of here looking like it would have just come out of a factory back in the 1900s, so that these people will have it to go forward with them. But it's amazing some of the things that come through here, and the beautiful part about it is, and as I mentioned, the number of tools that we have here are numbered. The system is numbered. I can use the exact tool that the guy used back in the 1900s to carve the same thing. Like if the leg gets broken off on one side, or somebody has left it in a place where it gets dry rot and falls apart and that sort of thing, I can use the exact same tools that he used to carve that leg just by looking at the other legs that he's got that are still in good shape and copying it and make the exact duplicate for him to be repaired with. It's unique in a way because you read about the masters, you read about their techniques, you can see pictures of them, but until you do restoration work, you don't get to work with them. And to me, that's one of the really the blessings of doing this kind of work, because I can spend an afternoon carving with Daniel Mueller, who was one of my favorites, or John Zolar, another one of my favorites, because I'm working on the horse that he built 100 years ago. And to get to do that's a privilege. And it's kind of nice in the way that I can let him teach me how to carve and use the tools that he would have used when he was doing it originally back in the 1900s. It's quite unique. This fish that we have right here is just one that we brought out here from the carousel down at Coolidge Park, and we're repainting it and getting it ready to go back down there. But all of these other four that are here are older ones that we're working on now. But this first one that we've had stripped down and just have the primer and everything on it is a German horse, actually. And the interesting thing about him, in the early days when carousels were so popular and everybody wanted to have one, it was hard to keep up with demand. So what they decided to do was to import some of the smaller inner row horses so that they could keep up with production. The funny thing about that is Germany and France had carousels that went the same direction that ours did. Britain had one that went the other direction, typical doing things different than what we do. So we had to buy either French or German horses to go the same direction as what we had, couldn't use the English versions. So this is a hind horse, I believe, that we're trying to get fixed up. But you can see where the joints has been busted up, and we've had to fill them up, repair them, put some putty back into them, strip them down. But this one actually is an American horse, and this was one of the ones that would be a fairgrounds horse. It would travel around the countryside, and you can see the rings that would hold it. Sometimes these would just be hanging up and spinning, but you'd also have where you could put reins on them so that you can act like you're actually using the reins to ride the horses. So this one's been stripped and primed, and we're getting ready to start doing some of the painting on him. This will be more like a whimsical horse, more of a cartoonish style, if you want to call it that. Still a beautiful horse, but still it's not, doesn't necessarily have to be anatomically correct and that sort of thing. It's more for whimsy, and that's a good thing for all the different rides that went around the countryside and everything. This is one of my favorites right here. The unique thing about him, they call it a transition horse. But what is unique about him, he's got a wooden body on it. This portion down here is wood, but the legs, the tail, and the head and the neck are made out of aluminum. And so you can actually see the screw pockets here on the side where they have held his head and bolted it down into the wooden body. So what would happen after this thing would get worn out or torn up or anything, they just unbolt the head, the legs, the tail, make another body and put this one back on it, repaint it, and put it back out into service. The interesting thing about this is that during the war, obviously this was made in 1929, somewhere in that time period. Well, after that, anything that was aluminum pretty much got melted down to make airplanes out of for the war. So the fact that this guy has survived and is still in one piece is kind of rare and unique. So he's one of my favorites. But the last horse over there is another fairgrounds horse. You can see where he's been broken up with the legs and some of the other parts, but we'll have to strip him down, put a new leg on him, and do some work on the back legs, and then we'll get him primed up and ready to go. We'll get the paint on him so he can get it back out there and let the kids ride him like he's supposed to. Yeah, one of the wonderful things about doing the restoration work, we've had people calling us from all over the United States, and it's kind of sad in one context because there used to be thousands and thousands of carousels that are out there, but a lot of the cities got tired of paying to have them run or something, and they just basically stuck them into warehouses somewhere or in somebody's barns. So you have a lot of horses that are just sitting there rotting away. And the beautiful part about that is somebody will see those and recognize their value, and then they'll call us or they'll call somebody else to do it, and they'll bring them down, and we will do our best to put them back into pristine, like new condition. The techniques that they used was doing oil paints on the body, so we can go right back in on top of what they did there. Sometimes we'll strip them down and get them back down to primer, and then repaint them in the same techniques that they would have used then, using oil paints and that sort of technique. But the other part of it is the joints sometimes will come apart because there's too much moisture in the air. In the old days, they would use hide glues, horse hide glues actually. And so a lot of times if they got too much moisture in them, those glues would just let go. The leg would just fall off type of thing. So when we put them back on, we like to be true to what they did, especially if we're just closing up a joint that's opened up a little bit. We don't want to put the brand new glues like the PVA glues in there, but we'll go ahead and use hide glues that we have available to us that mimic and match what they would have used in the old days. The beautiful thing about hide glue is you can put fresh glue on top of old glue and they'll bond together. The PVAs that we use on our newer animals, you can't do that with. You have to strip it back down to bare wood. But if I have a horse leg or a body that's separated and it's got some of the old glue still in there, I can put new glue in right in with it, clamp it back up, and it will hold itself. It will last for another 100 years. What we have here is a group of legs that are some of the original ones, and you can see all the different techniques that they use. This one is interesting in the context that they basically have a spline that goes in here to hold the legs together. That's kind of unique to this particular manufacturer, but most of these had dowels in them. You can see some of it here. These two holes matched up with the holes in the other part of the leg, and there was blind dowels in here so that it fit together. And actually this, if you look back over here, this horse right here has one of those sets right there. Inside of this particular joint that's here, there's two dowels that go up through there across that to hold them all on. The interesting thing about this one is basically they also have the other style of dowels, which are through dowels, and what they would have done here is actually glue this leg onto the body of the horse and then drill a hole all the way through here up into the body of the horse and run one dowel all the way through it to hold it on. You can see there's another hole that's right there, the same thing. And they would have literally drilled this after it was glued onto the horse body rather, and run dowels all the way through it, as opposed to doing it in a blind fashion like we have here. But they would do all kinds of different techniques, and some of that just depended upon what they did at that particular factory. And that leads us to this horse over here. This particular one here has got to be repaired, and basically that's a different joint altogether. That's what they call the half-lap joint, and you can see where one piece of wood overlaps the other piece of wood, and that's all got to be taken apart and rebuilt where it's rotted out and has been broken. But this one on this side's not broken as bad, but you can see that's where the joint is at. And it literally is just two pieces of wood that are laid side by side and glued together with a cross grain situation. But that's what we run into when we do all of our restorations, because one manufacturer may have used the half-lap joint, the other guy may have used the spline joint, some would use the dowels that are hidden dowels like that. There'd be all kinds of different ways that it would happen. So we have to really analyze what they did and then copy that. So some of that's a challenge, but we've had enough of the animals through here that we understand what they're capable and what they do. So it's not too bad. These are actually some copies of some of the older ones. If you look, that one is basically just a hoof that we use as a pattern, and this one is a copy of another style of horse that we've had to do and everything, and it just gives us the proportions and the ratios that we need to carve this one. This one's more stylized than most of them, and we have another one, same type of here, that just does a kind of a stylized carving for the tendons and the muscles. Not much more show for that, just a couple of cuts, and that was enough for them. They'd paint the rest of it on there. But again, a lot of time you just have to figure out what the company does that you're kind of to restore it for and mimic what they did. That's the beauty of the gouges, like I talked about before. I can go over there right now and look in my kit, and I can tell you exactly what gouge made that cut right there. So that's probably either a number 9 or a number 11, probably about an 8 millimeter. And so I've got one like that. So I can make a replica of this and make that exact cut with the same type of gouge without any problem at all. But I got to know which one it is first. Traditionally, when a carver was making an animal or anything else for that matter as a carver, sanding was just something that was prohibitive. If you belonged to one of the guilds back in the Middle Ages and you picked up something to sand or smooth one of your carvings, they'd probably throw you out, because the techniques that we teach, you should be able to come off the steel, off the tool edge, with a surface that is smooth enough that doesn't require sanding. And if it does require sanding, it should be nothing more than just a simple wipe down to get rid of some of the facets and things that are showing. But the technique will take care of all of that. When you make a carving, like if you're doing something like a muscle on the side of a horse, where they have the different ridges and the ripples and the things that go into the muscles, the tendons and that sort of thing, if you'll use the right tool and the right technique, you'll make one cut down through there and it will look finished. It'll be a smooth surface without any kind of ripples or any kind of undulations on there. And then all you have to do from that point is basically just put the primer on it and start painting the thing. So we don't push too hard on that, because some of these people who haven't carved for very long will need to sand, and we're not opposed to it, but we'd much rather teach them how to do it so that you don't have to sand. It's something that you'll get one day. All of a sudden, as you're carving, you'll be looking at the carving and you'll look how smooth it is and how burnished the surface is, and you realize, I'm not going to have to sand that. And it's quite an accomplishment, but it's something, you get that eureka moment where the little light bulb comes on over your head and you realize, oh, that's what he was talking about, and that's why we do it this way, because literally some of the masters, some of those guys that worked in the early 1900s, they could do the entire horse and not use any sandpaper and be ready to put primer on it without any problem at all. And by the time they painted it, you wouldn't be able to tell that it hadn't been sanded, because it's that smooth coming right off the blade. Yeah, I'd like to show you a little technique that we use here when we're doing all these animal legs, especially the horses. But when you normally buy your gouges, you're going to have one that's like this. It's got a straight edge all the way across the top. It's got square corners and that sort of thing. And that's great for a lot of different techniques. But what we want to do is show you a way to improve upon that. Now, what we do is to take a gouge and we change the profile on it. You'll see how it's kind of an arch on the top of it, and it's got rounded corners. And what that allows us to do is, as we're going through the animal, we find a lot of areas like the kneecaps and the ankles and stuff that are like little half mounds. And so what we will do is regrind this, and if you can come right over here, I'll show you. But I'll just lay that one there for reference. But if you take this kind of a gouge, and you've done the trick that we talked about to it, if you're talking about right in here, that's where the ankle has got a big bulge there on most horses. And the best way to carve that is using a gouge like this in what we call an inverted cut. So as you turn this upside down, you see the bevel's up now. It's not like the standard way you approach the wood. You turn it up like that, and you go to center, and all you do there is use that shape to cut to the side there. And you see how I'm just peeling that off? And if I keep doing that, going in all directions, it will form a perfect mound that fits where the ankle bone is at. It makes the bulge. So I can just do that, and then I go ahead and blend it out. By doing it, just pushing it further out, I can just blend it out, and eventually it's all going to smooth out all the way. But what that does is give me a way to make a mound, a circle effect, if you will, a dome, so that you get a perfect shape on how this works here. I haven't done this side completely, but working from there, you can just see all I've got to do is go to the side and slide it off. And what I've done there on this side of the tool, this area that's flat right here has got to be flat onto that piece of wood. So if I keep that registered against that, then all I have to do is raise the handle fraction and then just push it forward, and it'll start shaving all that off. And if you do this long enough, you can actually make a complete ball out of this whole area here, but you can see how that smooths it off. And if you were able to feel this, you could tell that it's very smooth, and you won't even have to sand it and everything. So I can do the same thing there, but when I come up to here and start the same thing on the knee, it's the same technique. Again, remembering which way my grain is going, and I can just lay it on the side there, basically centering myself on where I want to cut from, and just start pushing off the side. And you'll see how it just planes that away nice and smooth and creates a perfect mound without too much effort. That way you can go ahead and do every leg, every joint, all these others with nice, easy precision without having to worry too much about one not looking like the others. And you can use that on a lot of the parts of an animal because you want a rounded effect, like on the skulls, the nose, and places like that. You use what's called the inverted cut, as I said. So all you're doing there is taking, this is the normal presentation of your gouge. So all we do is invert it upside down, bevel up, and then go back in there and start shaving it down like that. And it really gives you a good smooth surface and creates a shape that you can't do any other way. Now if you go to a smaller circle or smaller mound rather, you can go down to smaller gouges. You see all these other different sizes I've done the same thing to, or even a larger one here to do that same effect on all different shapes and sizes. So this gives us the ability to do all of these shapes very quickly and very accurately without too much fuss. A lot of the modern carousels you see, especially a lot of those that are in malls and different retail outlets like that, are more of a fiberglass casting, if you want to call it that. There's actually a term called roto casting that you can see a lot of animals that have taken some of the original ones and literally copied them and turned them into castings. And they will replicate them and put them on little small motorized carousels. And that's not a bad thing because it is a nice ride that kids can enjoy and have a good time with. But what we like to do is make them the traditional way, the way that they have been made for 200 or 300 years. And it's a little bit different. It's harder, but it's not a production situation. It's making something that is a gift. We give it to the people in this area, and spending the time to carve it takes a lot longer. But they are totally unique. There's no way you can duplicate of the feel of a wooden horse in your hand or when you're riding it or anything with fiberglass or plastic or any of those other kind of casting tools that are out there right now. The uniqueness of Carousel can be duplicated from the 1900s forward in the same steps, the same tools and techniques. There are several carousels still operational in America that were installed in the 1900s. And they're still functional. They still have the original animals on them. A lot of the original woodwork and everything is still the same because it was done well and it was maintained over the years. And we want to extend the tradition because it doesn't take too much to make something out of fiberglass and just put it out there to have somebody ride it. But it's a labor of love to make something out of wood that you're carving with your hands, that you're going to put out in the world, and hopefully it's going to last 150 years from now. When you're carving a mane like this with all those curves and swirls in it, you're going to have to use multiple different gouges and V-tools to make this happen, because you can't carve in these tight areas with a straight gouge, V-tool. So this one is kind of a small one. It's number 16. It's about a 35-degree cut. So you can lay this in when you do straight cuts, and you can slide it down through here like that and make that kind of a cut. But as soon as you get down into this kind of an area right here, it comes sweep is too broad to go across there for a straight gouge. So what you have to do is switch over to one of these type gouges. I keep calling them gouges, it's a V-tool. Switch over to one of these so that you can make that kind of a curve. So then as you lay that in that same groove and start making your curve, you can make it and follows up through there, because it allows you to be able to dive in and pull out like that, not a straight line, so you can carve that way. If it gets really curvy, like down in through here, you can also switch from this one over to a spoon V-tool, which is like this one. You see how much tighter radius that is? And so then what that allows you to do is to get down here and really make a tight sweep as you make a turn to come up the other side like that. Once we get all the carving done, the next step is to primer the whole thing. One of the unique things about it, we use a traditional primer that you can get at the hardware store or something like that. But in the old days, they called it gesso. And all that was basically oil in a binder that was mixed up with titanium dioxide, white, so that it would become a primer. And it was mixed up and poured on and rubbed in and all that kind of stuff in the wood to act as a sealant, but also to give it a good surface so that the paints that they were using could bind to the surface. Now, they will rub down an animal in the old days. They would use things like burlap bag and stuff like that to roughly take off a lot of the edges that the primer would put on there. But what we normally do is put 2 or 3 coats, and we will rub between them and smooth them out so that by the time we get finished, it almost looks like it's solid ceramic. And that basically gives us a wonderful base. Not only we seal the wood for the animal, but we've also got a beautiful base now that we can paint over the top of it and put all those colors into play to really bring it out. It's amazing to see one that's in primer only. You get to see all the shadows and all those kind of things, but then once you start adding the tones and the shading and everything to it, it really makes it come alive instantly almost. The thing with painting is, in the old days, they would use all the primary colors and mix all of their own colors. Literally, it was a process that they went through, and they would generally stay with the primary colors on the horses and then blend and mix some of the other colors when they were doing their decoration part of it. But we have a little bit more leeway than they did as far as that goes, because we don't have be limited to the same primary colors they had, but we do have the ability to do mixing and everything else. But one of the techniques that they used back in the old days that we try to teach people here is what we call stippling. And what that boils down to, instead of just painting a brush on or using an airbrush like a lot of people do, we literally take different colors and we'll stipple it on. And all stippling is just to get a little paint on the end of your brush and tap it on the surface of the animal so that it will just pick up dots of paint. And you'll do that as a blending technique. So like if you were going from a light color to a dark color and you wanted to blend the tone so that it wasn't stark or didn't have a hard line between light and dark, you would stipple the paint from one side to the other so that you would mix those two up in various degrees going from light to dark. And you could add different tones. If you wanted to brighten up the color, you could add a little red with that primary color and tap it in there to brighten it up. If you want to cool it down, you do the same thing, adding a blue or a purple or some of the cool colors to mix with that same color and then darken it down so that it makes it look like more of a shadow line. There's all kinds of different things you can do, and it's really kind of fun. The cool thing about it is if you try an experiment and you fail, just paint over it, do it again. It's amazing because there's no such thing as a bad color as long as you can remove it, erase it, or prime back over it and start doing something new. So that's one of the fun parts of this thing. You can be as creative as you want to be with it. One of the most important things to me when you talk about carousels, and especially the traditional carving methods that we use here, is the history of them. And I think it's important for us to really think about carrying all of this forward, because what kind of a world are we going to have when you don't have the ability to use your hands to make beautiful things and you don't have the knowledge to do that? All of this can be eliminated within one generation. If we don't have someone step up and take it to the next generation, it's going to be gone. And somebody will have to relearn it sometime in the future if they even think about it at that point in time. But to me, part of the reason I do this and the part of the reason I'm here is to make sure that I've done my part to carry this forward so that someone else will learn these skills and be able to take it forward and continue this tradition. It's a proud tradition. It's a valuable tradition, and it would be a shame if we let it get lost.